Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving deep into cartilage and synovium.
Yeah, two super important topics if you're prepping for those orthopedic exams.
Absolutely. And for this deep dive, we're using the Ortho-Made Simple Notes from mokyingren.sg.
Created by Dr. Ren, a sports surgeon over at National University Hospital in Singapore.
Who aced his FRCS exams back in 2022. So we're in good company here.
Right. You're in for a treat.
Let's jump right in. Anatomy 101, quick recap. 3 types of cartilage, right?
You got it. Hyaline, fibrocartilage, and elastic cartilage.
And each has a different type of collagen, giving it its own unique properties.
Exactly.
We've got hyaline cartilage, the most common type. Think knees, hips.
Then fibrocartilage for those structures that need a bit more strength, like minutiae of the knee.
And then elastic cartilage.
What?
Springy, ears and epiglottis.
Right on.
So hyaline cartilage, amazing stuff. Did you know that it's 30 times more slippery than artificial joints?
30 times. It really highlights how incredible natural cartilage is. You know, one of the big challenges in orthopedics is trying to replicate that with artificial joints. And that incredible slipperiness is thanks to something called fluid film lubrication.
Fluid film lubrication.
Yeah, the cartilage basically weeps and boosts synovial fluid as the joint moves.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it's a shock absorption superstar, protecting our bones from all that impact.
Okay, so hyaline cartilage sounds pretty important. But I remember back in my resident days, this is where things got a bit tricky, especially for exams, because hyaline cartilage is avascular, aneral, alymphatic.
And non-immunogenic.
Yeah, so practically no blood vessels, nerves, lymphatic vessels, or immune response.
Right, which has huge implications when it comes to healing.
Because without a direct blood supply, it's got a really hard time repairing itself.
Exactly.
But hyaline cartilage is not just a uniform blob. It actually has this really cool layered structure.
The arcades of Benninghoff?
Yeah, like a layered cake.
I like that analogy.
Each layer with its own specific purpose.
So you've got the top layer, zone 1, that's like the smooth frosting, built to resist those shearing forces when we move. Zone 2, the middle layer, is more chaotic, like the cake itself. And then zone 3, the deepest layer of uncalcified cartilage. That one's packed with proteoglycans, giving it that compressive strength.
So it's like the strong base of the cake holding everything up.
You got it. And then between zone 3 and the next layer,
We've got the tide mark.
a tide mark,
Right.
super important, because the cartilage above the tide mark, poor healing capacity, below the tide mark has a slightly better chance, but even then it often forms fibrocartilage, which again, as we were saying, isn't quite as good. Finally, you have the calcified zone anchoring the cartilage to the bone. So that's like the plate holding the cake.
I like this.
Keeps it all together.
Okay, so we've got these layers, but what exactly is hyaline cartilage made of?
Well, it's mostly water, around 80%, crucial for lubrication and nutrient transport. Then there's collagen for strength and structure, and then the proteoglycans, which give it that incredible shock-absorbing ability.
Oh, and don't forget the chondrocytes.
Right. Those tiny cells working hard to maintain that cartilage matrix.
These little guys.
They are.
So speaking of proteoglycans, those are like the tiny springs in our joints, right?
Exactly. And the key player here is aggrecan.
Aggrecan.
Yeah, it's this giant molecule with a long hyaluronic acid backbone, like a central rod. Attached to that are link proteins, and from those sprout core proteins with chains of chondroitin and keratin sulfate.
Oh, a lot going on there.
Complex structure, but it's all designed to resist compression.
So those negatively charged sulfate chains repel each other,
Exactly.
creating a cushion that prevents the cartilage from getting squashed when we move.
You got it.
Amazing how nature figured that out.
It really is. And this highlights why damage to those proteoglycans can have such a significant impact on joint health. Now, one thing to remember, and this is a favorite for examiners, hyaline cartilage isn't the same in every joint.
Oh, that's right. I remember this from Dr. Mota's notes. Why is that?
Adaptation. For example, the hyaline cartilage in your shoulder, it's thicker in the superficial layer, designed to handle all those arm movements. Ankle. Deep layer is thicker, to handle all those forces from weight bearing.
So each joint has its own unique set of demands.
Precisely.
Okay, so understanding those subtle differences, that's going to be crucial when we're diagnosing and treating injuries down the line.
Absolutely. Now let's compare hyaline cartilage to its tougher cousin, fibrocartilage. Different collagen compositions, but what does that mean functionally?
Okay, this is where I always get a little tripped up.
Well, fibrocartilage, with its higher proportion of type I collagen, it's tougher but less elastic. It has poor biomechanical properties, and it doesn't handle stress as well as hyaline cartilage.
So when fibrocartilage gets overloaded, it transmits more force to the bone, increasing the risk of damage.
Exactly. Fundamental to understanding why certain joints are more prone to certain injuries, for example, the meniscus in the knee, made of fibrocartilage. Vulnerable to tears, especially in athletes.
So hyaline cartilage really is better at handling those repetitive stresses.
Exactly. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on the synovium, another vital component of the joint. Think of it like the lining that envelops the joint cavity, providing nourishment and lubrication.
So like the joint's personal caretaker, what about its structure?
Two main layers. The intimal lining, in direct contact with the synovial fluid, and then the subintimal lining, which lies beneath. The intimal lining is fascinating, by the way, only a few cells thick and lacks a basement membrane, unlike most other linings in the body. All about maximizing that exchange of nutrients and waste products.
Interesting. What about those cells within the intimal lining? What are they up to?
Well, those are the synovial cells. And the most important ones are the type B synoviocytes, like tiny factories churning out synovial fluid, the joint's essential lubricant.
Okay, so type B synoviocytes responsible for making that all-important synovial fluid. And what about the subintimal lining?
Ah, that's a busy area. Full of fibroblasts, blood vessels, immune cells, macrophages, plays a crucial role in inflammatory arthritis. But we'll get to that later. For now, let's focus on synovial fluid.
Synovial fluid, definitely more than just a simple lubricant, right? I remember reading that it's derived from blood plasma, but with some key differences.
That's right. It's essentially a customized version of blood plasma, specifically designed for joint health. It's formed by filtering blood through the synovial membrane, but it lacks clotting factors, red blood cells, and hemoglobin.
So it's like a tailored fluid for the joint, providing nutrients, removing waste. Fascinating.
Yeah.
But didn't Dr. Monk also mention that synovial fluid has some unique physical properties? Something about being non-Newtonian.
He did, and this is where things get really interesting. Non-Newtonian means its viscosity, its thickness, isn't constant. It changes depending on the forces applied to it.
Okay, so not like water, which always has the same viscosity. So how does the viscosity of synovial fluid change?
It becomes less viscous as the speed of movement increases. So when you start moving a joint, the synovial fluid thins out, allowing for smoother movement. It's also thixotropic, meaning it thins out over time when subjected to a constant shear rate.
That's amazing. Our joints are even more sophisticated than I thought.
They really are.
This deep dive is based on the Ortho Made Simple notes. Check out mokyingren.sg for more orthopedic gold.
Tons of great info there. Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about synovial fluid, that incredible joint lubricant, with its fascinating non-Newtonian properties.
Yeah. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that whole thing. Like it actually changes its viscosity depending on how fast the joint's moving.
Almost like a smart fluid, adapting to the needs of the joint. But let's shift gears a bit and talk about how cartilage gets its nutrition. We know it's avascular, meaning it doesn't have a direct blood supply. So how does it survive?
Yeah, this is something that always tripped me up back in residency. If it doesn't have blood vessels, how does it get what it needs?
Diffusion. It basically soaks up nutrients from the surrounding fluids, primarily the synovial fluid, delivering oxygen and other essential nutrients.
So like a sponge.
Exactly. And this highlights why movement is so crucial for cartilage health. When a joint moves, the cartilage gets compressed, squeezing out waste products. When the pressure is released, fresh synovial fluid flows back in, bringing in those vital nutrients.
So it's not just about lubrication. It's about keeping the cartilage fed. I guess that's why they always tell us to encourage our patients to stay active.
Absolutely. Now, let's tackle the big question. What happens when cartilage gets damaged? We've talked about its limited healing capacity, especially above that tide mark. So what are the implications for us as surgeons?
Yeah, this is where things get really challenging clinically. Cartilage injuries can be a real pain to treat, especially those above the tide mark.
Exactly. Small, superficial injuries above the tide mark often don't heal well on their own. The body might try to form some scar tissue, but it's not the same as healthy hyaline cartilage, weaker and less able to handle stress.
So like a small tear in the cartilage of the knee, for example, might not fully repair itself.
Right. Now, deeper injuries that extend below the tide mark, do they have a better chance?
That's what I was going to ask. What about those deeper injuries?
They have a slightly better chance because they can actually access some blood supply from the underlying bone. However, the healing is usually slow, and the new tissue that forms is often fibrocartilage, which again isn't as resilient as hyaline cartilage.
So even with deeper injuries, there's that risk of ending up with less functional cartilage. It really makes you realize that preventing these injuries in the first place is key.
Couldn't agree more. Once the cartilage is damaged, getting it back to its original state is a real uphill battle.
Okay, well, let's dive into some specific cartilage injuries. The ones that we're going to need to know for our exams and for our future practice. What are some of those common ones we'll see?
One of the most frequent is a chondral fracture, where a piece of cartilage actually breaks off from the bone. This can happen from trauma, like a direct blow to the joint, or from repetitive stress.
And I imagine the treatment depends a lot on where the fracture is and how big it
Well,
is, right?
absolutely. Small, stable fractures might be treated conservatively. Rest, ice, pain relief. But larger, unstable fractures might require surgery. Sometimes we can just remove the loose fragment, and other times we might try to actually repair the cartilage.
So chondral fractures, got it. Another one that comes to mind is osteochondritis dissecans, or OCD. What's the story with that one?
OCD is a condition where a piece of cartilage and the underlying bone start to detach. We often see this in younger people, especially in the knee and the ankle. It's thought to be caused by a combination of factors, including repetitive stress, genetics, and sometimes problems with blood supply to that area.
So it's like a little section of cartilage, and bone is getting starved of nutrients and starts to die off. That sounds pretty serious.
It can be. The affected area softens and eventually can break loose, becoming a loose body within the joint. And that can cause a lot of pain and problems with movement.
So how do we approach treating OCD?
Again, it depends on the size and the stability of the lesion. Small, stable lesions might actually heal with rest and immobilization, but larger, unstable lesions often require surgery, either to try to reattach the fragment or to remove it and try to stimulate new cartilage growth.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, we can't really talk about cartilage without talking about osteoarthritis.
Right, the big one. Osteoarthritis is a degenerative joint disease where the cartilage breaks down over time. And as it wears away, the bones start to rub against each other, causing pain, stiffness, and inflammation. It's the most common type of arthritis, affects millions of people worldwide.
And what causes it? Is it just a matter of getting older?
It's a bit more complicated than that. Age is definitely a risk factor, but osteoarthritis isn't inevitable. Many people live long, healthy lives without developing it. It's really a wear and tear process that can be accelerated by a number of things, like genetics, obesity, previous joint injuries, and repetitive stress.
So a lot of different factors can contribute to that cartilage breakdown. Given how common osteoarthritis is, it's definitely one of the most important topics for us to really wrap our heads around.
Absolutely. And we'll be back shortly to discuss that and more right after a short break. Remember, this deep dive is based on the Ortho Made Simple notes from mokyingren.sg. Be sure to check out the site for more great information like this.
We'll be back in a flash. Welcome back to our final part of our deep dive into cartilage and synovium.
We've covered a lot of ground, from basic structure and all the way to the challenges of cartilage injuries.
Definitely a lot to take in.
Hopefully this has helped to solidify some of these key concepts for your upcoming exams.
Absolutely. And speaking of exams, let's talk cartilage repair techniques. There's a whole range of them out there.
Right. And when we're talking about cartilage repair, what we're really aiming for is to stimulate the growth of new, healthy cartilage.
Which we know is not always easy.
Not at all. But there are a few different ways we can try to do it.
Let's start with microfracture. I remember learning about this back in residency. Seems like a pretty straightforward technique.
It is. Basically, we drill these small holes into the bone beneath the damaged cartilage, creating channels for blood and marrow cells to flow in, forming a clot that eventually turns into fibrocartilage.
So we're essentially jump-starting that healing process, giving that new tissue a scaffold to grow on.
Exactly. Good option for smaller cartilage defects. And it can be quite effective, at least in the short term, at reducing pain and improving function.
But fibrocartilage, as we talked about before, isn't as durable as hyaline cartilage. Does that limit the long-term success of microfracture?
Good point. While it can provide some relief, that repaired tissue, it's just not as tough as the original hyaline cartilage. And it can wear down over time, especially in those patients who are really active.
So what about those patients with larger defects? Or those who are very active? What other options are on the table?
Well, one technique that comes to mind is autologous chondrocyte implantation, or ACI for short. It's a bit more advanced than microfracture.
Ah, yes, ACI. I remember reading about this in Dr. Mott's notes. It involves taking a sample of the patient's own cartilage and actually growing more of it in a lab.
You got it. We take a small biopsy, isolate the chondrocytes, those cartilage cells, and then we multiply them in a specialized lab setting. And then in a second stage, we actually implant those cultured chondrocytes back into the defect, often under a protective patch.
So the idea is to create a more robust repair using actual hyaline-like cartilage.
Exactly. And ACI has shown some pretty promising results, particularly for those larger defects in terms of pain relief and functional improvement.
But it is a more complex procedure than microfracture.
It is. ACI requires those specialized facilities and expertise, makes it a bit more resource intensive.
Okay. And then there's osteochondral allograft transplantation, where we're using donor cartilage and bone.
That's right. Osteochondral allograft transplantation, that's a good option for those large defects where we really need to replace a significant amount of both bone and cartilage, essentially a joint tissue transplant. We carefully match the donor tissue to the recipient to minimize the risk of rejection.
So it sounds like we've got a whole toolkit of cartilage repair techniques at our disposal, each with its own advantages and disadvantages.
Exactly. Choosing the right technique really is a decision that needs to be made on a case-by-case basis, considering factors like the size, location of the defect, the patient's age, activity level, and of course our own surgical experience.
This really highlights how important it is for us to stay up to date on the latest advancements in cartilage repair. It's a rapidly evolving field.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap things up, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier, the importance of movement for cartilage health.
Yeah, it's such a key point, especially when we're talking to our patients about how to manage their joint health.
Movement, it's not just about lubrication, it's about actually nourishing that cartilage and keeping it alive.
So when we move those joints, the pressure changes. It helps pump those nutrients in and those waste products out.
Exactly. So encouraging our patients to stay active, maintain a good range of motion, that's crucial.
And it doesn't have to be strenuous exercise, right? Just incorporating movement into their daily life.
Exactly. Taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking instead of driving, all those little things add up.
It's about creating a lifestyle that really prioritizes joint health.
I like that.
Well, this brings us to the end of our deep dive into cartilage and synovium. It's been a pretty amazing journey, exploring these often overlooked but absolutely essential structures.
I agree. We've covered a lot of territory, from their unique properties all the way to the complexities of repair.
And for those of you who are studying hard for those orthopedic exams, don't forget to check out the OrthoMate Simple Notes on mokyingren.sg.
It's a great resource.
Dr. Mark has done a fantastic job of putting together really clear explanations, key takeaways to help you master these topics.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We hope you found this exploration helpful. Until next time.
Take care.